Well, first of all, how many people were there last night at the church? Okay, just a few. Okay, good. A bunch of new people. So, nice to meet y'all. I do something called spoken word poetry. If you're not familiar, it's poetry written to be performed instead of read on a page. And so it's like the difference between writing a novel and writing a script for a film or a movie. When you write a novel, you expect your audience to read it on paper. When you write a script, you don't want people to read it on paper. You want them to watch as the artist performs what you've written. And so that's what it is. It's poetry meant to be performed instead of read. I did not always write poetry. I spent most of my childhood actually thinking I was stupid. And I did not have low self-esteem. I actually really was comfortable in my own skin. I really liked who I was. To me, thinking I was stupid was just a fact. Because of my context and because of the way I was taught to measure intelligence. And I'm one of 6 kids. My siblings, I'm the 4th. My siblings are brilliant. Now, I'm not just saying that because they're my siblings, but they actually are. My oldest sister, she went to one of the most prestigious universities in California, UC Berkeley. She graduated from there. Then she went to study in Mexico City, became bilingual, and then so she was a teacher in a inner city school in LA. And then my brother, after that, he went to UC Santa Barbara. He graduated from a 4-year university in 3 years with a double major, then went to law school, passed with flying colors, is a federal prosecutor, and works in Washington, D.C. Then my sister, in high school, she was a star track athlete. She broke national records with her relay team and got a track scholarship to UCLA. And then there was me. So when I tell you my siblings were brilliant and talented. And me, I like to say I was a good student who got bad grades. And what I mean by that is I did not slack. I went to class. I did my homework. I worked so hard. But we get an assignment that would take my siblings 30 minutes to finish, and they get an A. It'd take me 3 hours, and I get a B- or a C. Right. I was the only person in my family to ever fail a class. I failed algebra. F, had to take it again. I tried so hard. I went to class every day. Nothing came natural to me. Not reading, not math, not science. When it came to standardized tests at the end of the year, I bombed them. I cracked under pressure when I saw the clock ticking, and I couldn't do it. And so to me, that's what made you smart, right? That's what made you intelligent. If I'm not good at these things, then I must be stupid. That's just a fact. Somebody got to be stupid, right? I guess it's just me. And I was weird because I was fine with it, because being smart was for geeks, right? Like, it's for dorks. Like, this is my high school thinking, right? I was like, I'm cool. People like me. I have a good personality. You know, I always had a strong work ethic. I worked at a grocery store. You know what I'm saying? I was like bag boy wonder. Like, everybody loved me. I could bag a grocery. I just couldn't pass algebra. You know, and so I really thought I was just fact of the matter stupid. And although I thought I was fine with it, I'm sure on so many levels it affected me in ways I didn't even realize, and probably still don't realize, because anyone who goes through life thinking they're dumb is not really going to thrive as much as they could have. You know, so it was interesting though, because I always loved hip-hop. And I never wrote hip-hop really, just here and there, but never really wrote songs or wanted to be a rapper. I just appreciated it, and I would listen to lyrics all the time, and I would love memorizing lyrics, because it was like a challenge to me, because the way that rappers would flow and be so, you know, lyrical, I'd listen to songs and I'd try to be able to perform it just like the original artist, the rapper. And so I used to do that in high school, but I didn't really see that as anything special, or I didn't recognize it as an interest in creativity or creative writing. My freshman year of college, I went to a Bible college in the Midwest, and to me, later found out it was, for Bible colleges, pretty well known, but to me it was like, I mean, when your sister goes to Berkeley, Moody Bible Institute, everyone's like, what is that? You know, like, I would always get the question, like, so do you get like a certificate? Is it like a 2-year school? You know, so it was like, it wasn't prestigious. I thought this is the only type of school I could get into, right? I was raised in a Christian family. So I went there, and my freshman year, I met a few other students. The school was not very diverse, but there was a couple other folks who were really into hip hop, and my homeboy, he had a microphone and he downloaded some software where he could record. He's like, dude, man, I got this stuff. I got these free beats. Like, we should try to write some rap songs, you know? And so I started doing that my freshman year. And it was just a hobby. I didn't see it as creative writing because there's so many negative stereotypes associated with hip hop. I didn't see it as anything academic or intellectual or creative even. I was like, I wasn't writing, I was rapping. Right? And nobody cares about rapping but folks who like hip hop, right? No one respects it, at least. And so I started doing that for a couple years. But then the summer before my junior year, I got invited to an open mic for spoken word poetry. And I was never into poetry before because, again, it made me feel stupid. The type of poetry I was exposed to, I didn't get it. Right? The language was difficult. There was a lot of kind of Shakespearean antiquated English. And even the modern stuff was super metaphorical and just went over my head. So poetry always made me feel dumb as well. So I never thought I liked it. But then I got invited to this open mic. I was home for the summer. So this event was in LA. And it was all folks mostly my age. And they were standing up just sharing poems that made sense to me. And also they were talking about very personal things. It was crazy. I was like, you're sitting up in a room full of strangers sharing things that you wouldn't tell your best friend. And I was like shocked by it, but I also was inspired by it. I was like, man, I want to participate in this. I felt so much freedom hearing people say things that I thought and I'd experienced, but when I thought them and when I experienced them, I thought I was the only person in the world who felt that way. So it was such a freeing thing to hear someone else express something that I could relate to, even though I never even knew who that person was. And so I went to one open mic for spoken word poetry and immediately said, I want to participate in this. But again, it was not something that I thought I was good at. It was something that I started doing because I just liked the community of open mic, the honesty that happened there. So I started doing this in addition to rapping. But both of them were just hobbies. But it was really strange because after a while, when I'd go to these open mics and I'd share poetry, people were like, man, that was so deep. You're so smart. And I'm like, what? No, I'm the stupid one. You should meet my siblings, right? And it was weird to me. I was like, people started acting like I was smart. And I was like, they're clearly confused. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I didn't get it. But the cool thing was I was also, in Bible college at the time. So I was studying all of these deep theological, intellectual, philosophical ideas. And I was working really hard because I was dumb. I was like, if I get to college, I'm going to fail unless I work my tail off. So I did like nothing fun in college. All I did was study. And I got the best grades in my life my freshman year because I was so paranoid of dropping out of college, So it was like library, homework, that's it. But anyway, so as I'm kind of trying harder than I've ever tried to apply myself at school, I also started writing creatively. But again, still didn't really connect these concepts because my creativity was a hobby and all of these things. But I soon started realizing that people, again, started treating me like I was doing something intellectual or worthwhile. And the things I was studying in class started to bleed over into my creativity. And now it makes so much sense to me because I believe part of being created in the image of God is being creative. Human beings are the only creatures in all of the universe that tell stories, that dress for fashion, that pass down previous generations. Lions are majestic and beautiful, but they don't know or care what their grandparents did, right? So there's so much. I think it's crazy to me to think, as a person of faith when I was younger, trying to understand God without exercising my creativity, I was missing out on so much. And it's like crazy that I ever did that. But I think one of the interesting things was, though, studying God in an academic context is good. However, at my Bible college, it was a lot of academics. It was a lot of intellectual ideas so that we could get in debates with other faiths and other philosophies, and it was still that struggle because God was so intellectualized to a person who feels stupid, to a person who isn't smart, according to my own estimation. If I can't understand these hyper-intellectual, theological, philosophical concepts, then I can't understand God. If like knowing God means being able to, to keep up with all of these hyper-intelligent, biblical, religious, philosophical scholars, then I'm just not, But I was trying. I was trying really hard because I was excited about the possibility. Man, I'm going to be studying my faith for 4 years. I'm going to come out this like apologetic ninja. You know what I'm saying? Like, give me an atheist. He's going to love Jesus by the end of our conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just thought, like, that's what I was going for. And so I was studying and I was trying to comprehend these ideas, and I was trying to apply myself and be good because I wanted to be a good student, but I also wanted to be, a Christian who was respected, because I know a lot of people don't respect faith. And I was like, I have an opportunity to study under some of the most intelligent, professors and biblical scholars. Like, let me do this. But something interesting happened. The more I studied, I didn't start to feel more equipped to defend my faith. It was just the opposite. I was like, man, this mug is kind of crazy. This is like, these concepts they're really difficult to grasp, and they buck against a lot of logic in some ways for me. But my faith was still firm. Like the story of the gospel, the person of Christ, like I was so convinced of that. But as I was like studying these things, trying to explain them, like, I don't know, to use a philosophical term, like hypostatic union, like, oh yes, Jesus was fully God and fully man, not half and half and blah, blah, blah. And like trying to explain this to someone who didn't grow up in a faith is like, this is not convincing. You know what I'm saying? Like the virgin birth. So she never really had sex, but she was pregnant. And God made her pregnant. Like, how can you explain that like and not look like an idiot? Right? Like, there's nothing you can say to me, no matter how smart you are, to someone who's not a person of faith. You cannot explain the concept of the virgin birth and make it make sense. You can't. A virgin got pregnant by God. Totally. Yeah. Right? But I believed it. And so I was struggling. But one thing that helped me was, one, starting to write poetry and understand the creativity of God, both in the story of the gospel and in the way God works. But then also, specifically, I studied this passage in 1 Corinthians, the first chapter, which really, I guess, created a freedom in me and caused me to stop trying to make God an argument all the time and hyper-intellectualize my faith, but to, say what I believe and then express the gospel in so many ways, creativity included, and intellect, because we're called to love God with all our heart and mind, right? Not either or, but both. But 1 Corinthians 1, it says this, and this, I don't know if this is my sophomore year or junior year, but completely changed the way I approach my biblical education in Bible college. But it says in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 21, for since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. Then later in verse 27 it says, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. This passage really changed things for me, because here I was trying to get smart enough to make God make sense to everybody so that they could believe. Then I read this passage, and it says, God gave humans intellect so that we could know and experience and love God in a way that no other creatures can. But since in man's wisdom, we took that gift and we bucked against God. For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom. God gave us wisdom, the wisdom of God, and we didn't know him. We abandoned. And so it says, it pleased God that through the folly of what is preached, in other words, the gospel was by design intentionally created to be foolish according to unregenerated human logic. Why? Why would God want to make something not make sense to it? It says it later, so that no human can boast. If the truth is just a matter of understanding, of being smart enough, then anyone who doesn't accept it is just too stupid to know God. And there's pride in that. I'm a Christian because I'm smarter than you. Because I have better arguments than you. Because I'm more intellectual than you. You don't understand God because you ain't on my level. But God says, no, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to intentionally use something as foolish as the gospel, and it's going to be true, so no person can boast. No one can say, I'm smart enough to go to heaven. I'm smart enough to know the truth. I'm smart enough to be considered loved by God. No, it's just the opposite. But God chose what is foolish to shame the wise. No matter how smart you are, if you're a person of Christian faith, you have to put your faith in something that you know will make you look like a fool to people who aren't Christians. That's a humbling thing to do. You have to be humble enough to accept, I am putting my faith in this thing that people will consider me an idiot for. Complete idiot for. God says, yes, because I want your heart to be in that place of humility. So no one can boast and say, this is a free gift. You have to humble yourself to the truth of this weird, strange, foolish, beautiful message that God loves us, that God died for us, that God came and became one of us and walked on the earth and did miraculous things. But it's not just a matter of intellect. So that really helped me, because I'm like, I actually, when I'm trying to make my faith completely a matter of argument and intellect, I'm actually going against God's plan. Because if God designed it to be foolish on purpose, and I'm trying to undo that to make it logical to everyone, then I'm preaching the gospel in a way that God never intended. It's supposed to be foolish. Now, again, I'm not bucking against human logic in general, but understand, no matter how smart you are, there's going to be certain things about your faith that just don't make sense to people. That's why it's called faith. So that being said, I want to share some poetry with you from my college years. Several things I was wrestling with, and one of them was the fact that this whole kind of discussion. When I was in college, my junior year, I got sick. Quick story, it was Taco Tuesday at Moody Bible Institute. If you learn anything from me, it is never trust mass-produced Mexican food at a Bible college in the Midwest. Don't do it. So I had the same routine. Every Tuesday, I would go down to the student dining room. I would load up my plate with way too many tacos, jalapenos, hot sauce on top, and they were not good tacos, but I'm from Southern California. I can't resist a taco, no matter how mediocre or disgusting it is. So I would load up my plate with way too many tacos. Then I would eat, and I would feel terrible. I had the bubble guts. I go back up to my dorm room. I would work it out, and I'll be like, I'm never doing that again. Then 7 days later, I go back, do it again. Right? That was my routine. This one particular Taco Tuesday, got my tacos, hot sauce, jalapenos, everything, bubble guts. But when I went to the restroom, it felt kind of funny. It's like, that don't feel regular. So I don't make a habit of this, but I look back at it, you know what I'm saying, just to see. And there was blood in the toilet. I was like, dang, I put on too much hot sauce. You know what I'm saying? But I really didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it. I thought, oh, whatever. I ate something funny. I'm young. I'm healthy. I'm athletic. I'll be fine. So I didn't do nothing. A week went by. Every time I use the bathroom, I'm bleeding. Another week went by. I'm using the bathroom like 7 and 9 times a day, bleeding every time. Finally, a month goes by, and I'm like, maybe I should go to the doctor. So I go. I was diagnosed with this condition called ulcerative colitis. It's complicated and disgusting. But, of course, I was at Bible college. So when my friends found out I was sick, they said, oh, can we pray for you? Absolutely. So all my friends prayed for me, prayed for healing. I was really thankful, but I was still sick. Graduated, went to intern at a church in Oregon, and when people there found out I was sick, they said, oh, can we pray for you? I was there for 2 years, and So many people prayed for me. Then after that, I moved back to where I grew up, Long Beach, California. And when all my friends found out I was sick, all my friends of faith, they said, hey, can we pray for you? I said, sure, whatever. To be honest, I was kind of over it, but I just let them because they wanted to. And I was still sick. Then one day, this particular lady, she found out I was sick, heard about my situation, asked if she could pray for me. I said, sure. Her prayer was fine. It was regular, whatever. But it was something she did after, a question she asked me after the prayer that really frustrated me. And so that's where this poem comes from. It's called What a Fool. In the name of Jesus. Amen. Do you feel something? Something tingling in your stomach? No? No. But I appreciate the prayer. And I meant that. I really did. It was a kind gesture. An expression of sympathy. And I believe in God and all, but did you really expect something to change right then? Abracadabra, amen, be healed on the spot. My God, what is wrong with this girl? What a fool. What a fool to think my pain would disappear. What a fool to think her prayers were any different than the dozens, hundreds, thousands of faithful saints who've laid hands on me and rebuked this disease in the name of Jesus. What a fool. What a fool to pray with expectation. Like she actually thought God would hear and respond. It's these type of Christians that make us all look crazy. You know, the ones with faith. Too much faith. The ones convinced God grants supernatural power. The ones who look like fools for Christ and don't mind what anyone thinks. The ones whose prayers go unanswered, yet they keep praying, keep hoping, keep asking. Do you feel? The ones who feel. The ones who know God with more than their mind. The ones who don't waste time picking fights with atheists, but go to war on their knees. The ones who lean not on their own understanding. The ones who serve a God that doesn't bow to human rationale, but uses the fool to shame the wise, the weak to shame the strong, those who are not to bring to nothing those who are, and how far I have come. After 4 years of theological training, constant reading to appease my philosophical cravings, my thoughts about God are intelligent. My belief is a kind unbelievers can respect, not the ignorance of simple faith. Not the type to get you mocked, persecuted, crucified. My religion is safe. And I wonder how it got so lost. And I wonder, who's the fool after all? The one who prays, the one who waits, the one who dies believing God is on his way. Or the one who prays, never expecting him to come. I have a lot of other things to say because I'm a long-winded preacher. But any questions before we move on to talk a little bit more about creativity? Any comments, questions? Negative? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment that my mother went to Sunday school at Moody Bible Institute.
Oh, cool.
And she drew the conclusion all religion is baloney.
Yeah.
That was her reaction to the Moody Bible Institute.
Got you. Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
quite different. So.
Yeah. It's all good. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Any further questions or comments? I'll just jump into it. Yeah, okay. So for me, once I started exercising my creativity again, it became hard for me to think, man, how did I ever try to live or understand God without creativity? I see it as so central. Again, it's the first thing we know about God. One of the first things. In the beginning, God created. And then when I look specifically at the Bible and the life of Jesus, God so often employs creative expression and language and poetry and storytelling to explain and reveal God. Jesus, I know this sounds funny, but Jesus had great theology, right? He very could have easily constantly spewed facts about himself, right? In very hyper-intellectual theological language. You know, he could have talked about the hypostatic union and all of these other things, but he didn't. Instead, you know what he did? He said things like, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the door. I'm the light of the world. I'm the vine. And you are the branches. You are the salt of the earth. You are the workers in the field. And the field is ripe for harvest. What are all those things? Anybody? Metaphors. Right? They're metaphors. Poetic language to explain the person of Jesus. He could have used so many other things, but he used metaphor. Again, when Jesus was called out by his critics and asked difficult questions, he often told stories, made up stories. Someone asked him, who is your neighbor? He could have given a factual, theologically sound answer about how all humans are created in the image of God and so on, but he didn't. Instead, he said, you want to know who's your neighbor? You know, there was a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he got beat up and left for dead. And then a holy man, a priest, passed him, and then a Levite passed him, and then a Samaritan, his enemy. Racial tension between Jews and Samaritans passed him, but he didn't pass him. He stopped and he helped him out. Now you tell me, who's his neighbor? He told a story. He didn't open up the Old Testament. Sometimes he did, but so often, sometimes he quoted the Old Testament prophets, but so often he used story, metaphor, creative language and expression to explain who he was and what he was about. So we see the example set by Jesus. Also in the Old Testament, everyone knows Psalms and Proverbs are like poems, right? We know that. But so many sections of the Old Testament prophets are actually in their original languages poems. Just like, you know, if I write a poem in English and you translate it to Spanish, if it rhymes in English, you might not rhyme in a different language. It probably won't. If I have all these specific poetic structures and devices, when you translate that, we miss the fact that it's poetry sometimes. But it is. And this is something I learned in Bible college. I didn't know that. Where whole passages of prophets are literally like just speaking poems about their life and experience with God. And so that helped me see, like, this is nothing new. You know, this is always been a part of the way God works. And I think it's beautiful. But at the same time, again, I think when it comes particularly to poetry, a lot of people feel, especially if you're writing about something spiritual, a lot of people feel the need to be profound, right? And super deep. If I'm going to write about God, it's got to really shake people to the core. It's got to be really good. And back to this desire to be intellectual, even if it's a creative intellectual. You know, it's like, I want to be deep. I want people to read my poems and go, oh, you know. But the fact of the matter is, some of the most profound people I've ever met have been uneducated. Some of the things that people have said to me that has resonated the most. My grandmother is in her 80s. She's an African-American woman from Prentiss, Mississippi. She dropped out of high school because she's one of 11 kids and she had to help her mom raise her younger siblings. This woman is not educated in the traditional sense. But I guarantee you, if you sit down and have a conversation with her, she will drop some profundity that matches any doctor or lawyer or philosopher you will ever meet. And she will use simple language and simple vocabulary, but she will walk away with your face melted, right? So being profound doesn't mean being super deep in your language. Even when it comes to metaphor, I personally think a lot of poets hide behind metaphor. I think they use it in a way because they don't really have the courage to say what they actually want to say, so they kind of hide it behind a metaphor. I think, and sometimes, I'm more of a kind of storyteller, straight up type person, so I know this is largely opinion in some senses, but when I see metaphor employed, I think the purpose of metaphor is to enhance understanding, not to cloud it, right? So, when Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches," talking to a people who are familiar with agriculture, he wasn't trying to be super abstract and ambiguous. It was like, okay, you know about grapes. You know about grapevines. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you take a branch and you cut it off from the vine, that branch is going to die, right? So he used metaphor to enhance their understanding. When David says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He was a shepherd. Other folks in that community were familiar with shepherds, even if they weren't. So it wasn't like, I'm going to use this metaphor so it gets all super deep and only the really smart, poetic people can understand it. It's, I'm going to employ a metaphor to, you want to know what my relationship like God is like? You know, a shepherd, how he really sacrifices for the sheep and takes care of the sheep and makes sure they're safe and leads them to green pastures and puts them beside still waters and restores their soul. That's how God is, right? So, these things, they're beautiful, poetic, but really they're kind of simple concepts. They're metaphors to enhance understanding, not make it more cloudy. And so I think that is a lie that a lot of people believe, and why I thought, again, that I wasn't smart. I also thought I wasn't poetic because I was only exposed to a certain brand of poetry. But one of my favorite poets who talks about this is a guy named Gil Scott-Heron. Anybody ever heard of him? So he has this poem called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." You'll hear it quoted. Yes, it's quoted all in popular music. So many, from rap songs to rock songs, to so many people quote it. It's wonderful. If you haven't listened to it, you should look it up on YouTube. His name is Gil Scott-Heron. But he's telling a story of being in high school, and their English teacher was doing a unit on poetry, and she passed out this poem, and it was kind of Shakespearean era, antiquated English. And by the way, if you're into that, that's beautiful. I'm glad people appreciate it. I'm not saying that type of poetry is wrong. I'm saying it's wrong that a lot of us have been taught and thinking that is the only type of poetry that's worth something. You know what I'm saying? Because hip hop is also poetry, and I didn't respect it, because even though I loved it, I didn't respect it, right? But anyway, so he's telling this story. So they pass out this poem, and they starts reading it, and "Thou art the yonder of thy morning gloom on the dew of the day," type thing. And he says the person next to him, in his class, he reads the poem in his head, and out loud he says, "Hey, this must be deep." Now what he meant by that is, I have no idea what this is saying. But because this language is so flowery, and these words and this outside of my vocabulary, they must be saying something important. But that is not true. It might be deep, but it might just be flowery language about someone trying to sound smarter than they are, right? So, and so he goes on to explain. It's like when he's a spoken word poet. It's like, so the type of poetry I want to write, yes, I want people to be moved by it, but I also want people to understand it. I want to write poetry for the people, by the people. I'm not trying to front like I'm up here. I want to use common everyday language and tell the stories and make reference to things and use metaphor that people understand, So that's kind of my aim. And the funny part is, when I when I give up this desire to try to sound super smart, I actually end up writing stuff that's more profound, right? When I just start to tell my story from my perspective in my language, people start to appreciate it more. Because I'm being more honest, more authentic. Anyway, the little time we have left, if let's see if I got time for both of these. If you're a creative person, whether you're a writer or anything else, I would strongly suggest a book, well, two books. One is called Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Reich, and then the other one is called Art and Fear by Ted Orland. and another author, but I forget his name. But I love Rainer Maria Reich because he kind of is hitting on the same idea that everything doesn't have to be super deep and poetic and all this stuff to be worth something. And Letters to a Young Poet, he writes this. He says, write about what your everyday life has to offer you. If your everyday life seems poor, don't blame it. Blame yourself. Admit to yourself that you are not enough of a poet to call forth its riches, because for the Creator, there is no poverty and no poor indifferent place. He then goes on a tangent about the city of Rome. In addition, Rome, if one has not yet become acquainted with it, makes one feel stifled with sadness for the first few days through the gloomy and lifeless museum atmosphere that it exhales, through the abundance of its past, which are brought forth and laboriously held up through terrible overvaluing, sustained by scholars and philologists and imitated by the ordinary tourist in Italy. Of all these disfigured and decaying things, which, after all, are essentially nothing more than the accidental remains from another time and from a life that is not and should not be ours, no, there is not more beauty here than in other places. And all of these objects, which have been marveled at by generation after generation, mended and restored by the hands of workmen, mean nothing, are nothing, and have no heart and no value. But there is much beauty here, because everywhere there is much beauty. So he goes off on this tangent about Rome. He says, hey, Rome is not that impressive. Have you seen the Colosseum lately? That junk is corroded, falling apart. All of these statues got their limbs broken off, bird pooping on the head. They ain't shiny no more. All of these temples is like 3 of the walls are down. There's like 2 columns and 1 wall standing. He's like, this is from another life and another time that isn't ours. But then he goes, yet there's much beauty here, because everywhere there's much beauty. What's his point? His point is, when it comes to inspiration, when it comes to, poetry, people think they have to have these romantic vacations to Rome. They think they need to have these super high mountaintops or really deep valleys, right? They have to have some incredible experience. Their heart has to be spewing blood or flying high, sky high, in order to create something profound. And he says, that is not the truth. He says, Rome, you don't need Rome. Rome is no more inspiring. Rome is no more beautiful than a cornfield in the Midwest. Because life is beautiful. And if you pay attention to the people and the things around you, no matter where you are on planet Earth, no matter where you're at in life, you'll see beauty. And that is profound. And so I found that to be true in my own writing. One of my I did it last night, but one of my most popular poems, people love it, was inspired by a bottle of shampoo. It was, because I was at my friend's house and the label on the shampoo said, for normal hair. My friend was white, but I thought, I grew up in a house with 8 black people. My hair was normal. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that even mean, normal hair? Who gets to decide what hair texture is normal? That same product, if it was being sold in South Africa or Ghana, would it be labeled for normal hair? No. I know that product wasn't for me, because we have our own section, the ethnic section, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And so it's like, here I am, like, looking at a bottle of shampoo and being inspired and thinking about cultural standards of what is normal and abnormal and all of these things. And I don't believe I have a third eye. I believe every single last one of us has interesting thoughts like that. And if we go through life a little bit slower, and when we have those thoughts, capture them and develop them instead of just thinking, oh, that's weird, and keep going. No, stop. If something makes you pause, if something makes you think, write about it, paint about it, develop it. And when you discipline yourself to do that, you will see more beauty in life. You will see more God in life. I guarantee you. Thanks. Yeah. Quick thing, so there's an open mic tonight at, I think, 5:30, you said? Students will share. I will be sharing more of my poetry. Also, I do have CDs of my poetry and one of my hip hop projects, but these are also all free downloads through my website. So if you broke, you can grab a business card and you can download it for free through my website. And if you want to keep up with me, I'm releasing a blues album actually on the 27th of this month. So yeah, you can sign up. I have a sign up sheet for that as well. But yeah, so you can buy a physical copy or you can grab a card and download them for free online or buy them on iTunes. Thanks.